we are unpacking the fears that so many of us have around public speaking, asking, does exposure really equal confidence? Can technology replace the human touch? To unpack all of this and more, and of course take your questions, your concerns, your woes, your worries, we are joined by Flo Akinbi, who's an international presenter, a TEDx speaker and a communication coach who has made it his mission to help people find their voice. Flo, I'm worried about being in conversation with you because I can see you looking at me and listening to me. And radio is very different, but I actually have a bit of a fear of public speaking. So I'm really glad you're here for very selfish reasons. Tell us a little bit about why you're so passionate about helping people find their voice and share their message.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
And don't you worry, I'm always analyzing you. I can't help it. The communication coach never sleeps. Nevertheless, I enjoy conversations and building connections with humans, and we'll come to that later. If I tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm passionate about helping people to become better communicators, because public speaking has allowed me to build a wonderful career for myself. I have created a career where I get to meet amazing people, get to see celebrities and inspiring people on the stage, learn from them, and to share this gift with others is fantastic. And if you invest in this skill, it can do so much for your career, for your life. And it's not just a cliche that I say here, it's really the truth.
And what are we hoping that people will get from our conversation today? If people listen to everything that we're about to impart and share, and you can teach, how could people's lives change, do you think?
Well, if you get inspired that you invest in stepping up your public speaking skill, you can literally get that promotion that you've always wanted. Because one of the things that you need to do is, if you want a promotion, is you need to be more present in an organization and also externally. And that's where public speaking is a great skill to have. You need to get your ideas across more effectively. And this is the crazy thing, I am not one-on-one communication and relationships, not at all. This is something that I touch. But some people that I've worked with, they even had better communication in their relationships just because they work on that skill of public speaking.
I think also when we think about public speaking, we have this idea of someone standing and doing a TEDx speech, being on a stage in front of 10,000 people. But it does take many different forms. It can be speaking up in a meeting. It can be that interview situation. It can be, at a dinner party and feeling more socially confident as well. So I don't want people listening to go, well, I'm never going to be on a stage or in that situation, because as you rightly say, confidence in that communication can touch on many, many aspects. So why do so many of us fear public speaking, Flo? What's going on in our minds and our bodies?
Well, you have to go a little bit back to ancient caveman times. And if you think about it, you're standing right now in front of your tribe. And if you say one word that they don't like, they can kick you out of the tribe, which means ultimately death, right? Because you have no food, no security, no shelter. So therefore, we're not going to survive. And that's what happens when we are in front of an audience. There's this little ancient brain part of ours that tells us, you say one word and you're going to die.
You're cast out.
Exactly.
That's why I hate it. I tell you why I don't. Hate's a strong word. I fear judgment and stumbling and people thinking, maybe it's imposter syndrome. Maybe that's when people come to you and they're saying, this is something I really want to work on. What are some common challenges that people are really looking to address?
Absolutely. What you mentioned is that it's a lot of our confidence. It's a lot about learning the skill of being able to address a larger audience. It's about self-confidence. Sometimes it can be also related to never have done that before, so they don't even know where to start. And sometimes also organizations, I work a lot with corporates, they come to me and say, our team could communicate better. We see that they don't fulfill their potential. And that potential is shown when they are actually communicating inside and outside. And that's where I can come in.
So what are some common myths then about public speaking that you have the microphone now at Dubai Eye that you'd like to bust? What do you think? That is just not true. It's nonsense, and I can help you with it.
I'm going to give you one that you just mentioned, stumbling. So I had recently the wonderful opportunity to do an interview with Pep Guardiola. I mean, the most successful soccer coach of all time.
Even I've heard of him, Flo.
Almost all times. He's number 2, but yeah. Now, I messed up big time. I messed up so big because I looked at him and I don't know nothing about soccer, but I learned a lot. But then I looked at him and I said, so, Manchester United, da-da-da. And the audience goes like, and he goes like, ooh. And you know what? I just said, so now that I messed this one up, I guess I won't get paid, but We were all now comfortable. We had a laugh and let's move on. And you know what? Because I built connections with people, I focused on being a nice person. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. I did get paid. And some of the audience went, did you do that on purpose? So us actually being worried that we might mess up is more an internal perception.
To your mind then, what separates a forgettable speaker from a really memorable one, Flo?
Well, I would say there's a few elements that we need to really put together. One, content is definitely king, but it's not everything. Your delivery is important. And for me, I call this almost the Elon Musk effect. I like this word. Why? Because Elon Musk is not the greatest speaker of all times, and I can show you proof, scientific proof that he's not the greatest speaker of all times. But when he speaks, the world listens. And why do they listen? Because his content is amazing. He's got rockets that land on the planet being caught by chopsticks. So all of that is amazing. And when you have this kind of content, everybody wants to listen. But when we don't, then we need to put in the extra effort and we have to prepare our content better. And we have to, use our voice, our body language, everything that we can to engage the audience.
Flo, what do you make of this AI tool from Cambridge University? It's talking about using virtual reality to, confront you with 10,000 people and deal with that anxiety.
I have actually used a VR tool to practice my TEDx talk. It's actually great. For me personally, it does not replace properly the real deal, but it's better to practice in a cupboard, seeing a full-on auditorium and an audience and your slides and everything. That is maybe animated or 3D, but it's still more effective than to practice in front of a mirror. Much more.
So it's a little bit like exposure therapy. And it's, as I said to you earlier, I have really struggled with public speaking in the past. And ironically, the thing that really helped me was doing more. So I became qualified as a wedding celebrant, so performing people's wedding blessings. And that has helped me enormously for a number of reasons. One is a wedding is generally a very happy occasion. So everyone is really delighted that you are there. Even if you do stumble, people are just happy to be together and celebrating love. And by getting confident in doing something very comfortable and positive, I've then started to build my confidence in doing things that might be a bit more out of my comfort zone. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. For me, my career presenting started with Toastmasters. I visited Toastmasters for many years. I was already back in the day in Germany hosting a few fun sports events. But when I came to Dubai, I was focused on my corporate career. And for me to transition into presenting in an environment where it's not my native English language that I speak, it helped a lot to go to Toastmasters, practice, learn a bit more, and do meeting after meeting where I get to speak in front of different audiences. And that's how you gain confidence. You
have shared the stage, Flo, with celebrities, politicians. When you think about speeches or moments that stand out over the years, what comes to mind?
Oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Really?
Standing up and flexing his muscles was amazing, very entertaining. Michael J. Fox, who I saw 2 years ago at a conference that I hosted, and he was severely ill, but him delivering first a 5 minutes keynote speech and then afterwards an interview was so memorable because he had to put in so much effort and the audience could feel that, and his messages were powerful, beautiful.
I think it's about that power of connection, isn't it? And I've seen people, I'm not going to name any names, who are on the professional speaking circuit, who are so well practiced, and it's almost like muscle memory. They don't need to think about what they're saying because they've done it so many times. And it always just feels very flat to me. It doesn't resonate. I know they're being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to be on a stage and say something that they said for hundreds of $1,000s to a different crowd on a different stage last week. And I think it comes back to that point. It's about not putting the effort in. It's about inauthenticity. Even if it when they wrote it and the first time they delivered it, it was meaningful and powerful and true. For me, a lot of people who are professional speakers, I just feel like, does that?
I had that same experience 2-3 times where I had heroes that I've been following for years. And again, I don't want to say any names, but I've been following them for years and they inspired me also to become a better communicator. And then when I saw them on stage, I was so disappointed because you could feel it's very transactional. There's not love that they put in. It's not coming from the heart. And the audience can feel that, whether it's a corporate presentation or it's on the big stage. If you don't mean what you say, we can feel that. Definitely. It's a sensor that we have.
Let's think about some people who've done some amazing speeches over the years. You've brought some examples with you. Who should we have a listen to?
I would have a listen to Steve Jobs because he's still one of the greatest. He has a fantastic voice and also his content is business related, so it will resonate with more people out there.
And for those of you that have iPhone 4s, the new iPad 2 is actually thinner than your iPhone 4. So we're incredibly happy with this, and when you get your hands on one, it feels totally different. And all of these other tablets are coming out, most of them even thicker than the original iPad. Nothing even approaching this.
That's not a performance, is it?
No.
He's not there really with that kind of salesy pitch. It is just, this is what we have. I have confidence in it. I'm pausing. I'm connecting. And I think a lot of people speed up when they're nervous. Is that something you have with clients? People just want to race through whatever they've got to get through.
Absolutely. That's something that can happen when you're nervous, that you speak faster, or some people just tend to speak at a faster pace. And maintaining pauses, holding silence sometimes is very powerful. Steve is great at that. But what you can also see with Steve Jobs' presentation, although they seem to be very much off the cuff and relaxed, he was a very, very strong person when it comes to preparation. He even invented a clicker when there was nothing there because he wanted to have control over his PowerPoint slides, right? So it tells a lot about him, and his speeches, they're world class.
Flo's with us today. Any questions, do reach out on 4001. Anonymous has been in touch saying, hi both, I feel very self-conscious about my accent when I'm speaking in English in public. Not a question as such, but is this something that you've come across yourself or with clients, and what advice would you give?
Well, let me start with this. I am a German, and when I came to Dubai, I was speaking English a little more with a strong German accent, not very pretty. But you don't have to change your accent if you don't want to. You just need to take into consideration, do people clearly understand you? If not, it's a problem. If they have to ask, what did you just say? We got to work on that. But an accent per se gives you a bit of...
it's who you are.
It's who you are, right? It's authentic, and also it gives you a flavor. So therefore, I wouldn't change an accent necessarily. And what also many people underestimate, there's actually quite a few English native speakers out there in the world. Most of them are second language speakers. So therefore, don't worry too much about perfect English.
And there are English speakers who might have a very strong accent themselves.
Absolutely.
I'm from Newcastle, and that's a whole other language. But it's interesting because I was at university and I studied broadcast journalism, and a lot of it was about presenting to screens and cameras and things. And at the time, they didn't want any kind of accent. And they didn't say it. They didn't say explicitly, Helen, you need to lose your northern accent. Not that mine was very, very strong. They said it was about projection and enunciation. And now what you find in the UK in particular is people love a regional accent because you connect with who that person is. You get a flavour of who they are and where they're from. And there's a trust and a likability about it. And to you, Anonymous, I don't know who you are or where you're from, but if you were to come on stage and pretend to be somebody else, how are you going to have that authenticity that we've been talking about and really connect? If someone is worried about being understood or misunderstood, Flo, what are things that you can work on? Is it, to make them feel more confident in that delivery?
Well, I guess you're one of the best ones to teach us, right? All the different exercises that you would do to enunciate better, to focus on pronunciation, which, by the way, if you focus on your pronunciation, you also come across more competent, is a great way to exercise. So therefore, do tongue twisters, right? The good old Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers.
We had to do a proper cup of coffee is a proper coffee pot. Cup pot. Can't remember. I was like, but things like that. And you've got to really engage the brain on them.
Absolutely. Read out loud is fantastic. It's a great exercise. Learn poetry. And that's how you focus. And then, of course, also what you should do is have conversations with a native English speaker, whether it's a British or an American, somebody whose English you really love. And then you help them to coach you. You don't need a professional for that. Just a few conversations and they can point out a few words where you're stumbling.
Should we have another listen, Flo, to some people that you really admire? Oprah, a personal hero of mine. Why is she so great?
Well, first of all, Oprah is somebody who speaks from the heart. But something that I believe is also really powerful about her story and her speaking persona is that in the beginning, when she became a presenter, she tried to imitate other presenters, but then eventually she found her own voice and her own way of speaking. And that, I think, was a key moment in her career.
Each of us in this room are celebrated because of the stories that we tell. And this year, we became the story. But it's not just a story affecting the entertainment industry. It's one that transcends any culture, geography, race, religion, politics, or workplace. So I want tonight to express gratitude to all the women who have endured years of abuse and assault because they, like my mother, had children to feed and bills to pay and dreams to pursue.
Oprah Winfrey there. Some goosebumps in the studio today. Can we talk about connecting with the audience, Flo? I think for many people it's this idea of I don't want to connect. I'd rather pretend they weren't there. But why is it so important?
Well, first of all, when you speak on stage, yes, it's about the content. But then at the same time, if the audience is not with you, and if you don't observe them, and if you see that they're on their phone and you just continue with the content, it's pointless. You can also walk off the stage and nobody will notice. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you have to connect with the audience, and it's critical. So for me, I focus on that, and it's a skill that I practice every single day of my life. When I'm in an elevator, I will have random chats with strangers that don't want to have conversations. So I challenge myself when I'm on stage and have to connect again with strangers, that I know how to.
How? Tell us your ways. What are some quick wins on that front?
Well, when you think about elevators, nobody wants to talk to you right now. You just got to look at somebody and make them an honest compliment. It will always work, but it has to be honest. Or you just connect over common topics. Hey, are you ready for the weekend? Are you afraid of the traffic? The weather today is crazy. Whatever it is, simple stuff. And that's how we can build a conversation and build a connection.
And then on stage, when you walk out, is it a case of identifying a couple of friendly faces out there? Are you speaking to them as a mass? How does body language come into play in connection as well, Flo?
Well, body language and open body language is always helping. And body language comes into play to make sure that your body language is not harming you. If you speak, for example, with your hands in your pockets, some people could take that offensive. That can really happen. So therefore, avoiding the simple mistakes. Mm-hmm. And when you think about on stage building a connection, of course, things like storytelling, interaction, and a little bit of humor go well along. I remember when I was last year on stage and Sheikh Ahmed was in the audience. For me, I wanted to make him laugh. I didn't get to make him laugh, but I got him to smile. And that is great, right? That's a human connection and mission accomplished.
Bees said, this is a nightmare for me. I had to do a one-day first aid course for work recently. It began with everyone having to stand up and say something about themselves. I hated it. I'm in my 40s now, but I blushed and stammered like I did on my first day of school in the 90s. I get it. I really, really do. I think this kind of source of a lot of my public speaking anxiety was school, where you were going around in that classroom and you were reading out a sentence or a paragraph and you were counting down and you were going, okay, if he reads that bit, then she reads that. And then, okay, that's my bit that I need to read. And I just stand up maybe in front of someone that I fancy, or maybe someone that's not very nice, or the school bully. And you're going, judgment, judgment, judgment.
Absolutely. You know, the crazy thing about this example is preparation. Why? Because you have to stand up and you have to present yourself. And people get stressed. It's always my first exercise that I do in group workshops. You have to introduce yourself and people will say, oh my God, I wish I would have known, then I would have prepared. Are you kidding me? You have to be able to introduce yourself at any given point in time, but that's not what we learn in school. Mm-hmm. So therefore, that's one of the key things, that you have to know, what are a few highlights about my career? What are a few interesting things that I can tell, that I can connect with people about when I present myself? And when you have these kind of preparation already done, then when you have to introduce yourself, you're not going to be stressed anymore.
Priya's reached out on 4001 saying, I really struggle with public speaking, mainly due to the physical symptoms of nerves affecting me so badly. I blush very easily in everyday life. So in nervous situations, I'm literally the colour of a tomato, and I also have a bit of a tremor. My whole family has it too, so it might be genetic, but I find it very hard to hold my hand steady. And when I'm nervous, the shakes are off the scale. My knees tremble, my voice goes wobbly. Inside, I feel quite confident, but it's like my body betrays me. I've actually seen a job I really want to go for, but part of the role would involve public speaking, and I don't want to not apply because of my nerves. Would welcome any advice.
I have a lot of advice. So first of all, Flo also gets nervous. And I had to actually quite well battle my way through stage fright as well. I did a few sessions with a psychologist because I wanted to dive deeper and understand. But then at the same time, I also made sure that I find what can help me. So Flo gets sweaty, which is also not very pleasant on stage to get sweaty. So I found, for example, a device that's called Ember Wave 2, and that might actually help Priya. What it does, it cools your body. It's amazing. It's a little device. The use case is women in menopause when they get hot flashes, and you can click a button. It's very, very discreet, and it cools you down. And it has another side effect. If you get cold, then it can also give you a heat pinch. So therefore, it's a very cool device. So we have to find ways to be able to deliver. If your hands are shaking, you want to do broad gestures. You don't want to clamp them together. You don't want to hold an A4 paper in your hand. You want to gesture because that can also help. And if you know you're really shaking, breathing. You have to breathe. You have to focus on breathing and do maybe breathing exercises. And these kind of strategies can help you.
Power poses. How do you feel about a power pose?
Again, they can work. There's nothing wrong with a power pose.
I love them.
For me, it's not really my thing. I cannot imagine me standing in the bathroom going like, yay, go for it. But every person is different. And I've got a list of many different techniques, and it's about identifying what works for you.
It's a bit like affirmations. A lot of people swear by affirmations, looking in the mirror and saying,
Yes.
I am strong, I am confident, and a lot of people go, oh, it makes me feel quite nauseous. But for some people, it can really help. I think that's exactly it. It's throw enough stuff at the wall, see what resonates, see what's getting to the crux of what's going on. Because an anonymous message here saying it's definitely imposter syndrome for me.
I tell you.
That's huge.
I tell you about Affirmations 2.0. This is what I've done and what I'm doing for my clients. I created a song with AI around public speaking where affirmations are in there, where you make them personal, and then you can have a song with a tune that you love that is personal. And when you listen to that before a really difficult and challenging presentation, of course you will feel better.
I want my own theme song, Flo. You're going to have to send me this. Can we talk about voice modulation, about the voice as a tool and an instrument? Because a lot of us will have, I don't talk like this at home with my family, but, a lot of us might have a voice that we use at work or in different situations and perhaps don't understand the power of voice, of volume and tempo, warmth, mood, aggression, gentleness. How do you advise that you start to assess what your strengths and weaknesses are when it comes to your voice?
Well, first of all, speaking monotone is what many people do, and it's one of the worst things that you can do.
Give us an example.
Well, if you just speak flat without any melody, without any pauses, and you just continue to talk like this, nobody's going to listen. And
Microphone is going down, my friend.
Absolutely. So you got to work with your voice. As you so wonderfully demonstrated, the voice communicates a range of information. And in our daily lives, we're changing our voice many, many times. But when we're on stage, monotone speeches is what we can observe all the time. So what you want to do is you want to play around with it. We have a tool. It's a deep scientific analysis of a professor that looked at speeches from all around the world to identify what are charismatic speakers, just based on the voice, not at all on content. And with this tool, we can assess people. Oprah Winfrey, for example, in this speech that we just listened to, she has an amazing score, a charisma score of 87.8%.
A charisma score. How cool is that?
It is
What's
amazing.
the highest one you've ever experienced?
92.8, that's mine.
Oh, nice.
But Barack, 96.
I'm not surprised. Should we have a listen to him?
Yes.
It's our ideals, our values that built America. Values that allowed us to forge a nation made up of immigrants from every corner of the globe. Values that drive our citizens still. Every day, Americans meet their responsibilities to their families and their employers. Time and again, they lend a hand to their neighbors and give back to their country. They take pride in their labor.
High charisma score there, Barack Obama. Love it. What about language? About the power of what we're saying as well as how we're delivering it, Flo? Are there any words that you encourage people to incorporate? Any words that are an absolute no-no? Let's come back to content.
Absolutely. When you come back to content and when you speak about specific words, hedges is something that you all should look up and understand.
What are hedges?
Maybe, I think, I believe. We can say these things sometimes because we want to come across humble. But when I, for example, worked with an executive and we looked at one of his interviews that he delivered as a CFO, he said, before every question, I think. And if the CEO thinks and does not know, does not have facts, it's not helping him. It's actually really damaging his image. It takes away his credibility. So you need to look at the language that you use. And sometimes we need to work on that. Avoid a few words to make sure that we can come across confident. And if you want to take it up to another level, then look up a few simple rhetoric devices. They can make it even better.
The difference between performing, delivering on stage or in person versus what a lot of people are doing now, which might be doing a pitch on Zoom, for example, even online dating, how we communicate in person versus on screen. I find it very, very challenging when it comes to Zooms. And, during COVID, we were conducting so many interviews through a screen. And I hated it because I like to see people face to face and shake their hand and give them an encouraging nod or the look to say, okay, we're running out of time now. Any tips for anyone that might have, they want to be seen, they want to be heard, they've got a message to deliver through a really small screen? How can we win there?
Well, when it comes to online, especially on Zoom or any sort of online format, you always have to do even more. On stage already, you have to put in a lot of effort. But on stage, you see people in the room. You can react. Very often in these kind of scenarios, their screens are switched off and they won't even turn them on, even if you ask them to. Therefore, you have to see, what else can I do? It's about maybe already having amazing slides and a lot of them. So there's always action happening on the screen and not slides that stay on forever. So people can, after reading, go back to their emails, go back to their social media. So you need to captivate the audience. You need to use great stories to involve them. You have to interact with them through the chat. If you can, you should think about third-party Slido and Mentimeter, these sort of tools that allow the audience to also be active and answer polls. And the more you can do to capture the audience and make sure they're with you, that's how you're winning.
Flo, what have we not touched on or communicated or taught today that you think everyone should know or be aware of?
I think we've touched on a lot for today. If there's definitely one more thing that I would put my finger on, it's storytelling. The power of stories. You can teach an audience 1,000 facts, but a story can stick for a lifetime. So therefore, use great stories. And if you present them in a really engaging way with your voice and your body language and everything that you have, you're winning.
Thank you so, so much. I really, really appreciate your insights.
Thanks for having me.